Welcome to Language During Mealtime. Certified speech-language pathologist and children's book author Becca Eisenberg brings you creative professionals from the language learning and children's education field. With these ideas, parents can help their children with special needs improve language and reading abilities.
Hi, my name is Becca Eisenberg. Welcome to my podcast, Language During Mealtime, episode number 98. Today, I'll be interviewing Rosena Fung. Rosena Fung grew up and is based in Toronto, Canada. Her first graphic novel, Living with Viola, is published by Annick Press. Her editorial clients include the Globe and Mail, the Boston Globe, Chronicle Review of Higher Education, CBC Arts, Plan Sponsor, Maisonneuve, Bus Magazine, Avenue Magazine, Swerve Magazine, and Tridel Corporation. Her works have been featured on CBC Docs and CBC Arts. When she's not drawing, Rosena can be found teaching illustration, vending at zine fairs, and going to the library. So thank you so much for being here today, Rosena, to talk about your graphic novel, Living with Viola.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah.
So just to tell you a little bit of a story about how a lot of times people ask me, well, how do you find the books? And I always say books find me, and I don't find the books, but I had gone to Toronto over the summer with my son who wanted to visit Toronto, and I went to a really cute bookstore. And when I walked in, I just, I looked around and I immediately saw Rosena's book, Living with Viola. And I love graphic novels. I especially love graphic novels based off of, loosely based off of a memoir. And so I picked up this book and I just immediately loved it. I read it in one day, and anyway, we got in touch because I really think it's a great book and great topics to talk about. So just to begin a little bit, just talk about what is the graphic novel about? That's the first thing for anyone who hasn't heard of Living with Viola, what it's about. And then just one of my other questions was just, how did you begin writing and illustrating it?
For sure. So the book is about Livy. So she's about to start grade 6 at a completely new school. So she's really nervous. The book follows her trying to navigate adjusting to a new school, making new friends, getting used to things like homework and so on, as well as juggling family expectations for herself. As well as all the things that she likes to do and she wants to do for herself. But it is also about Livy, who is followed around by a shadowy twin character who looks just like her, named Viola. And Viola amplifies all of Livy's her deepest insecurities and her fears and all of the things that she's nervous about. She follows her around, shouting them around at her. And basically, Viola is a personification of her anxiety. So the book is following Livy's adventures as she adjusts to new school, new friends, and family expectations. But it is also about learning how to live with Viola. Or in other words, she's learning how to live with her anxiety. So that's what the book is about. And then in terms of how I began writing and illustrating it, I love comics very much. And I have always loved comics since I can remember reading and drawing. So that is definitely one of the things that power it. It's a passion thing. But specifically, I have wanted to work on a graphic novel for a while. But as luck would have it, I was actually at a zine fair, where that was actually where my editor found me. So she met me there. She saw my stuff. She liked it. And then she was in touch and said, would you be interested in working on a graphic novel? Because she saw potential there. And that sort of set things off, which was great. She's great. My editor, her name is Sarah Marie McMahon, and she works for Annick Press, who is my publisher. So together, she helped me. I had never written a long form comic before. I've written small short stories, but nothing of this length. And so she helped guide me in terms of trying to figure out what stories did I want to tell? And I had some ideas, but anxiety is something that I have always lived with. And it is something that, Yeah, just like Livy, that I've had since I was very young, and this was something that I knew very intimately because it colors every contour of my life. So I was like, okay, I think I want to like write a story about a child who's going through this, and I'm going to try to depict anxiety in this way so that it becomes so it's a way that I can articulate how I feel. So that's actually how that became, like how that started. So it was a story that I wanted to tell, and she helped me like bring it out essentially. So it's interesting because I actually, because of the timeline, I ended up writing that mostly during the lockdown, like the initial lockdown in March of 2020, I believe it was. So, I mean, by that time, half the book was not about half, about a third of the book was done. And then suddenly everything happened. And it was very strange because I have so much anxiety. And I know that this was a time in which many people started experiencing a lot of intense anxiety for obvious reason. And it's not that I wasn't, but in a way, working on this book actually helped ground me, which was really interesting because it was like an anchor. I knew that I had to do like X amount of pages a day, and knowing that that was something that I had to do, it created a routine during a very otherwise like precarious and uncertain time. So interestingly enough, a book about anxiety helped my anxiety during a very high anxiety time.
Yeah, I could see that though, because I think it's also like just expression, right? So, I mean, your book is all about expression. And so what I loved is just how you represented anxiety, and also just like the idea of self-talk. Cause I always think that, we're our worst enemy, right? Like as far as like, when you talk to yourself, you're like, why'd you do that? That kind of thing. And I loved how you represented that, and also just how it changed throughout the book. And how hard it is and kids. People do ask me like, well, why do you read middle grade books? And I do read adult books. I just want to tell people that I do. Yeah. But I like what I like reading it. Why I like middle grade and like maybe young adult is that, as a parent of two teenagers, you see the perspective in a different way when you're reading middle grade. So I think, especially through a graphic novel, I just felt like I could identify with the character more, and like maybe what she may be going through at a new school and her anxiety, and also just different friendships and how she's dealing with that. But yeah, anyway, just to go back to that, I could definitely see how working on something that was, about anxiety and about like, let's just say loosely based off of, your growing up would be helpful. So just that kind of leads to my next question in, Livy, and, how you were same versus different. Cause I know it's loosely based off a memoir, but like, did you make things that were similar to you, or did you kind of think about changing it a little bit, and what parts are different?
Yeah, for sure. So Livy and I are very similar. It is based loosely on events that did happen, or at least experiences. I didn't actually start a new school in grade 6. So that is something new. But I wanted to put Livy and write a story in which like someone is in a high anxiety environment and situation, and like what can happen. So even though that didn't happen specifically, I mean, there are certainly moments in my life where it has been more stressful than others. And that is actually when anxiety tends to come more frequently and has more power. But in other ways, Livy and I, we both like the same things. We both love drawing a lot, and reading is our favorite. I also love... I love it. We love the same things, and like I love plushies and toys and stickers and like things that are pink and bright. And that is also what Livy loves as well. I find it interesting that you mentioned about how you feel you have to say that you enjoy middle grade and also adults fiction as well, as if there is something like, but I also get it because like I love reading middle grade and I love YA like so much. I mean, that's the reason why I wanted my first book to be middle grade, because it's like it's my favorite like age group to read. I just find the books and the stories are so interesting. They're very compelling, and it is a very specific point of view as well that I really enjoy. But sometimes like I do get the feeling that, if I'm reading middle grade, I read like everything, but sometimes I get like, like, I feel like someone judging me, like, cause like I'm an adult and I'm reading middle grade. I'm like, first of all, there's nothing wrong with that. Like all reading is amazing. But also I do get the feeling of like being judged for the things that you like, as if there's something abnormal about it or weird. And I'm like, I love things that can be considered childish, right? Like I love glitter. I love like toys.
Oh, you should see my house.
I love it so much. And there, sometimes I'm sure some people may be like, why do you live in a toy store? Like, is this a child's room? I'm like, but it makes me happy. So why do I need to change? And Livy likes the things she likes, but throughout the book, some people are commenting like, oh, you're reading a girl's book or whatever. I'm like, there's nothing wrong. You like what you like, and there's no shame in that. I mean, that was a lesson that it took me much longer to learn. But I'm hoping that like young readers learn it sooner, rather than later. But other things, like there are some things that are different. I mean, like she deals with a lot of family pressure. It is not like the family that I've depicted is like some of the relatives are sort of like they're not one person in particular, like for reasons of like I don't want anyone coming at me and be like, how dare you depict me in this way. So there is some fiction involved and like sort of creating new characters, but based on experiences that I have had in terms of juggling my own like family and relative expectations of what I should be or what I should be doing in my life, that kind of thing. So there are things that are changed, like names and characters and physical appearances are changed. So that's not exactly, but all those experiences are real. Like everything has been like drawn from things from my past or things people have said or interactions that have stayed with me enough that I'm like, I need to write this down.
I do love the family dynamics though, because let's say every culture, every family has their own traditions. Like especially the part, where you like to, make dumplings, with your family. And so I think that part was also, really interesting. I just, for anyone out there, I don't want to give away the book because I want people to read it. But what I love about it is just incorporates so many different like kind of concepts or issues into the book. We have our family dynamics, we have her friendships, we have her like anxiety and kind of how she deals with that. But what I love is like her growth over time and how, it's, I think that she didn't want like her friends to come over and stuff like that and how that changed throughout the book. I think was also really interesting. And I kind of wanted to go back to a little bit about your own experiences and like how that, and just also like from your cultural background, like kind of how that influences your writing and illustrating.
So I currently live in Toronto, Canada. I was also born here as well. My parents immigrated to Canada from Hong Kong. I don't know when. I can't even remember. Maybe in the 60s or 70s, I think. So I'm part of like a diaspora population of Asian, like Chinese Canadian. So it's a very specific experience. And some of it is like that Livy also experienced as well. Her parents are also immigrants from Hong Kong. And there are, depictions of microaggression that happen in the book as well. They're all things that have happened in my life. Like I'm lucky that I grew up in a neighborhood that was extremely diverse. Like I had many, like all the people there, all the students in my class all came from different countries and like different lived experiences, which is really great. But there is growing up. So I grew up then like as a child in the 90s and the early 2000s. And there was I didn't see a lot of people who looked like me in the books I read. And I love reading so much, but like that, I have to admit, like that's one thing that really affected me deeply. And it's not just books I read, obviously in movies and like TV. And I never saw family who looked like me. And like, it really messed me up. I'm not gonna lie. Like it took me a long time. There was a part of me that was like, oh, I'm embarrassed about my family. I think my stories don't matter because I don't see anyone who looks like me. And therefore it must mean I'm not important, right? People who like my family is not. And again, like that is a process of unlearning that it's still happening, but I'm very like, it took me much too long. But there is that Livy encounters, she feels embarrassed about her home, about her parents, about the fact that they, about language as well. So that is all drawn from personal experience. So that has definitely affected both how I navigate the world. I understand that I'm seen differently. There's, a lot of xenophobia and micro and macro aggressions that happen like on a daily basis. But I'm hoping that like through this book and through Livy's experiences and her friends' experiences, that like younger readers both understand that their stories do matter. Like it doesn't matter who they are. It's all important, and that everyone is like equally incredible and wonderful. And so, and hopefully, learn to assess like what they think belonging means, or like who gets to be considered normal or not normal. It always comes back to like what is considered normal or abnormal. I feel like, because like I feel like these definitions are much too narrow. We have to open it up, like so that we're not being exclusive or problematic to others. So, but in any ways, that all of that influenced my work. And then obviously with the dumplings, like literally my mom taught me, and I have great memories. Like as a child, like she taught me how to make them, and it was always fun, like making dumplings. And I feel cooking in general is such a social, communal act, and that like it's a lot of fun, and it's also like nourishing at the same time. So it's something that I think is really important. Even when I'm just cooking a meal at the end, there's something very satisfying about it, because like it's a nice accomplishment, but doing it with someone is an extra layer of like fun and connection. So that's why that's there. Also, I really love dumplings. This is like one of my favorite foods. It's so comforting. It's so tasty.
Well, I think that's a big part of, when you're with family and culture and food. I mean, it kind of all goes together.
Yeah.
I know for myself, like when I, feel like I miss my mom, I'll always make her soup and things, like something we used to do together. So yeah. I think that it's, there's food is just not something we eat, right? It's just something that we kind of experience with other people. And it's like, it's also connected so much to an emotional like experience, Yeah. And a lot of times positive. I mean, because food is always usually good. Anyway, but I wish I knew how to make dumplings, but that's maybe something on my list. But
I have to be honest. Like, I mean, I don't make dumplings from scratch anymore. I always get like bags of frozen dumplings from like grocery store. It's still really good, but like making dumplings takes a lot of time.
I'm sure.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
It's fun though, but like I love eating them. But lately, like all my meals are like, how fast can they be? I don't have time.
Well, yeah. And that kind of brings me to my next point, just like being busy with other different projects. I mean, so anything that you're working on now, or anything that you what you do sort of like on a daily basis, and also like any plans for future books?
Yeah, I'm actually working on a YA graphic novel at the moment, also with Anik Press. So I'm excited about that. That one is based loosely on my mom's family history. So that is, I was working on that just right before now. So I'm excited about that one, but I think it's slated probably not until 2024, or maybe a little bit later. We'll see. Hopefully not later. Fingers crossed. So that's good. I'm working on other comic projects that will be revealed later. But in that, like, while I do that, so basically I'm focusing on comic stories, because telling stories and drawing comics are my favorite thing, but I also do illustration work as well. So sometimes like new opportunities will come up. So I'll do usually working for different clients. I also teach illustration at Ontario College of Art and Design University based in Toronto. So that is it's fun, but it can be hectic at times. So I have a lot on my plate. I also work like part-time at like an art supply store. So I'm always like juggling lots of things, which I feel like is very typical of many artists. So, but I mean, learning time management is a really important thing. So that's why I tell my students, I'm like, trust me, when you get out there, you're just gonna be like bombarded with like stuff, and knowing how to manage timing is always good in projects. But yeah, so I have a lot happening at the moment, but it's good. I'm very happy because me being like, I published, the book came out, I think just last year, like Living with Viola. And I graduated actually from art school, like maybe about 8 years ago. So like, but before that, I didn't go to art school immediately from high school. Like I sort of took a very circuitous route. Like I thought, this is very reflective of me and Livy as well. Not my family, but other social expectations of what I should do in the future. Being an artist is not very stable. And so I didn't pursue it right away because I thought, what am I going to do with it? Will I be able to sustain myself? So I didn't do it right away, but I wasn't happy until I found my way back. And now I'm like, okay, well, I'm making art now and I'm, making a living. So it is possible and to do what you want and do what you love.
Exactly. That's what I always tell my kids. But I mean, I love your work and your art.
Thank you.
You could always tell when somebody is like really emotionally, like when you're really connected to your work.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that 100% with your book. Like I could tell how much you're connected to it and how wonderful it is. So just what's the best way of people, finding your other works, and also like for anyone in Toronto nearby, just checking your work out just like in person. So I know at your website.
My website for sure. I'm on Instagram a lot. And I'm usually always posting new work or like previews or anything, or even personal work I do a lot of as well. So it's first name, last name, Rosena Fung is my handle. So following that is probably the best way to get any kind of updates. If you're in Toronto, my books can be found in like all local bookstores, big bookstores too, but I love my locals a lot. So like we have a great comic book, graphic novel store called The Beguiling in Toronto. They're incredible. But I also love like Type Books is a great place to go.
That's where I found your book.
Oh yeah, I love them so much. They're so great.
He was so happy for you. He said, I love her. And I'm so happy for her with this book. And I was like, okay, so I am definitely getting this book.
I love them so much. Like they're so great. And then like I don't know, there's so many great bookstores in this city that I can't even like begin to name them all. Book City is literally one called Queen's Books. Yeah, there's just so many. I also do like big, large scale murals, so you can find some of them across the city as well.
Oh yeah, I saw one that you did in like on your Instagram page. It was on like in the subway, right?
Yeah, there's one. So our public transit is called TTC, like Toronto Transit Commission. And then we have subway station. So yeah, I did one recently. It's a huge mural. It was great. It was like in collaboration with a bunch of students, like younger students who had these great ideas for like the future of transit. So it was a lot of fun working on that one. So that one, is visible in like the station windows. There's a few other that are, I can't remember what they are now. There's a few scattered around this city. So I'm very lucky that I get to work like in the public art realm to have my to work on these large scale projects. It's a lot of fun. But yeah, but yeah, definitely Instagram is the best place to find me. I'm there too much almost, I have to admit.
Well, that's, you know what, maybe I can include some of that in the post so that people could kind of see just, some of the stuff that you're working on, the murals.
Sure, yeah.
And then I'm just going to put a link to your website so that people could find you that way and your Instagram. Yeah. So, but thank you so much for being here today. Is there anything else you want to add before we finish up?
Nothing else. Only that I hope if you're out there listening, reading, I hope you enjoy it.
I know, definitely check out Living with Viola. It's a great book. And I also think it's like I think a good book for all teenagers, but especially anyone that's kind of going through some anxiety. I think, like you were saying, just like having, like reading about a character that you could really relate to could help a lot of kids.
Yeah.
And
I hope so.
Yeah. And sometimes anxiety is not always something people talk about all the time, especially young kids. They may not have the language to be able to talk about it. They may feel it, but they don't really know what it is because maybe it's the first time they've experienced it, especially when they're going into middle school. So I think, a nice way to kind of just understand it a little bit more is for kids to read about characters with it.
Exactly.
So, but thank you so much for being here today. And I'm excited to see your new book. I'm definitely going to be getting that.
Yay.
So, yeah.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for listening today. Listen and learn with us at Language During Mealtime.